So welcome to Lunchtime Learning. This month we are going to talk about depression at work. Talking about depression. So depression is a scary thing to talk about because I don't think anyone wants to be depressed. But unfortunately, we have to talk about it because it is so prevalent in our society. So depression is estimated to cost the United States $51 billion because of absenteeism. So whether that is disability, whether that is unplanned time off, it's because of absenteeism due to depression. It's costing the United States $51 billion. Another way to look at it is 200 million lost work days a year due to depression. So it's a big deal. And again, it's not super fun to talk about, but it's important to talk about because it is in the top three of the top workplace issues today. So 80% of people with depression report functional impairment. I want to explain what that means. It means that daily activities are impaired in some way. So maybe that looks like I can't go to work, or it could look something to the effect of I don't want to spend time with my friends or family as much. I want to isolate, I want to sleep more, but anything that interferes with our daily functioning. So 80% of people with depression report interference with functioning, and a lot of functioning has to do with going to work. So that's a really, really big statistic that we want to focus on. 15% of people suffering from depression will die by suicide. I did do a lunchtime learning on suicide a few months ago. It's on our website. I can point you there at the end if you missed it and you're interested in hearing about it. Um, but the good news that we certainly don't talk about enough is that 80% of people with major depressive disorder can be successfully treated. We know how to treat depression. We know how to treat depression. And I hear people saying things all the time like, I'm going to be depressed forever. This is just, depression is lifelong. We know how to treat it. We know how to treat it. We know how to support it. And so that's really, really important to remember. That's a really important message to give to anyone who who might be struggling with depression, that we do have treatments that work. We have medication that works. We have therapy that works. We know how to treat it. So the fact that it is very treatable, makes us want to talk about it more. So again, as scary as it is that depression is causing, absenteeism, lost money, things like that, it's obviously affecting workplace morale and culture. There is hope because it is very, very treatable. So we may know a little bit about what depression is, but I just want to review that depression is not necessarily being sad. As human beings, we all get sad. It's part of life, especially when there's life circumstances. When there's life circumstances, um, when there's life circumstances, we're going to feel a certain way from it. We're going to feel a certain way from it. Um, and so that doesn't always mean depression. That doesn't always mean major depressive disorder. A lot of the time, what people who are struggling with depression report is feeling very empty, not necessarily sad, maybe sad, but not necessarily sad. But empty. They have a loss of interest in activities that used to interest them. They struggle with motivation. They have a loss of interest in connecting with others that they previously connected with. Oftentimes people struggling with depression report feeling guilty, hopeless, or worthless. Um, a lot of the time there's a lot of physical symptoms of depression, and a lot of the time we notice those physical symptoms first. Are we getting a lot of migraines? Are we sleeping more? Has our appetite changed? Are we incredibly fatigued? Things like that we notice first. We did get a message in the chat that I just want to note for a second. When I said that depression is treatable, it's important to note that depression looks different in everyone, and please talk to your doctor about any type of diagnosis. Please do that. And I it just because depression can be very treatable, it does not mean that it's a quick fix. It does not mean that, you can go to the doctor once and you're cured of depression. That's not what I meant by that at all. It just means that we do have evidence-based treatment that works a lot of the time, 80% of the time. And to give hope in that way. So I wanted to clarify that. So thanks for the message in the chat. So let's continue. So let's talk about what workplaces can do, because this is a really, really tough thing, because it's the workplace. We have to hold people accountable to do work. Everyone is there for a job. They're not there for, mental health support. But one of the biggest things that we can do as a workplace is we can acknowledge it. We can acknowledge that mental health is affecting a lot of us. Mental health, even if we ourselves are not struggling with a mental health disorder, we most likely know people who are struggling with a mental health disorder, and ignoring it is not going to help at all. Um, a lot of the time, I have this on here. Um, we're seeing a lot of workplaces encouraging their employees to do kind of a self-test, right? Hey, call your doctor. If you're worried about these symptoms, call your doctor, and maybe ask about depression, or you can do a self-assessments. There's a bunch of self-assessments out there. Again, we can't diagnose ourselves or anything like that, but we're seeing a lot of workplaces trying to encourage staff to be self-aware, to say, hey, it's okay if you think you might be depressed. It's okay if you think you might, have anxiety or whatever it may be. Normalizing treatment, normalizing going to the doctor. Most workplaces have employee assistance programs. I work for an employee assistance program. So being able to just include those types of conversations in our daily lives, in our daily lives, can be really, really beneficial in the workplace. It can allow people to feel comfortable asking for help. It can allow people to feel comfortable asking questions. It can allow people to feel comfortable just talking about it. It's also important to train supervisors to recognize signs. Again, none of us are here to diagnose anyone, and none of us are here to treat anyone. But if we can recognize some signs and symptoms that we talked about in the last slide in our employees, that can be really beneficial for us to, depending on our relationship, ask the person we're supervising, hey, is everything okay? Hey, do you need anything? I want to remind you we have an EAP. Being able to recognize some of those signs so we can bring up some of those conversations as supervisors can be really, really beneficial. Oops. Ah. So what you can do about it, if you're not a supervisor, and what I'm about to say here can go out into, your personal life too. The biggest thing we need to do is talk about it. We need to talk about it, because talking about it normalizes it. Talking about it allows other people to feel comfortable talking about it. We can also provide resources. Like a workplace, we can provide an EAP, but if we know really good treatment centers, or really good doctors, or if somebody is struggling finding a therapist in their health insurance network, we can help with that. We can support other people. Again, talking about it helps a lot with that. So often, people who are seeking support, the first thing they do is Google it. They will Google am I depressed? They will Google therapists near me, psychiatrists near me, things like that, which as much as I love Google, and Google's a wonderful thing, that can get really overwhelming and really confusing. And so being able to provide resources. And then the last thing is being able to offer a listening ear. We often can't fix people. Well, we can't fix people. People aren't broken, but we often can't make people feel better. We often can't make people feel better. And for someone who's experiencing depression, major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, having someone say like, "Oh, just be happy," typically doesn't help. But having someone who can listen and who can just listen and support and know that that person isn't in control of what they're going through can make an incredible, incredible difference.